So, you're thinking of doing psychedelics. You read the Michael Pollan book, and your friend's cousin's uncle totally turned his life around with ayahuasca, and now you're thinking maybe, just maybe, it's time to give this crazy idea a whirl. And you're wondering where to start and just how this whole psychedelic world works. We've come to the right place. In this psychedelic orientation video, we're going to break things down for you to help you get a lay of the land. So there's a few disclaimer type things we're gonna wanna keep in mind. First off, these opinions are my own. I am not a licensed therapist or a medical professional, and this is not intended to be a substitute for advice from such a professional. Know that this is by no means comprehensive, but I did get lots of other experienced folks to review and weigh in on this, and I believe that this is a really good place to start. So, number one, above all, if you've got any kind of personality disorder, or even if it's in your family history, please don't take psychedelics. There's the potential to make things worse, or perhaps reactivate any episodes. Also, if your brain is still developing, please don't take any psychedelics. Or if you're on any SSRIs or any other kind of psychoactive prescribed medications, please don't take psychedelics. There are exceptions. Do your homework, research, and find out what's right for you. Number two, risk reduction, harm reduction. Test your substances. Learn how to use a milligram scale. You can get one really cheap at a local head shop or on Amazon. There are risks using these substances. Oftentimes there can be other undesired substances mixed in, adulterated materials. Fentanyl can be present and it can be lethal. Number three, keep in mind these substances are still illegal in most places. And there's a risk of adverse physical, mental, and legal repercussions. The person you might be buying your drugs from could be a cop, and if anyone tries to buy something from you, they could also be a cop. So, don't ever drive under the influence. Don't be a risk to others. Be a good psychedelic citizen. On to the good stuff. Just to be clear, psychedelics usually includes LSD, psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, and we usually throw MDMA and ketamine into the mix as well. And why use them? There's lots of reasons people use psychedelics. Personal growth, ceremonially, therapeutically, celebratorily. Taking psychedelics is usually referred to as a journey, and each journey has its own nuances. But one common rule of thumb applicable to all circumstances is to make sure your set and setting is dialed in, for first-timers especially. So what does that mean? Set is your state of mind. Setting is the location. So with set, it's referring to your mood and all your emotions and the things you're experiencing before you take a psychedelic. Especially for those new to psychedelics, you want to avoid taking them when you're feeling highly emotional, unstable, or anxious, as psychedelics generally magnify what's going on in the brain. Setting is where you're at. People do psychedelics in all kinds of places, and some of them are not terribly ideal. You want to make sure that the space you're in makes you feel physically comfortable, the lighting is nice, and that there's no chance your experience will be interrupted. Also very important, who are you with? Do you feel safe? Are these people you trust? The way most folks first encounter psychedelics is often pretty social, party, a festival, often a place where there's music and dancing, and it can be the best time ever, but as it's unpredictable, perhaps it's not ideal for newcomers, especially seeing that as you're in public, you have no control over the environment, and your senses are heightened, noises and people can be quite overwhelming. So for those first timers, think about really designing your experience. Be intentional by choosing as many variables as you can. Start at someone's house, hydrate. Start with super small amounts and get to know how your body reacts before going big. Putting on an eye mask and listening to creative music can really allow you to sink into a deeper, more insightful experience. Having a sober friend around, or at least somebody on standby who knows what you're doing, can also help. So they can support you in case anything goes sideways. Challenging experiences happen, and having a plan as to how to handle it can be instrumental in navigating such a situation. Ceremonial use of psychedelics has been going on for at least 10,000 years. Ayahuasca, psilocybin, San Pedro are some of the most common medicines done in group ceremonial spaces nowadays. People often gather, sitting together in circles, and a facilitator, shaman, curandero, leads the ceremonies in prayers and songs. We'll go into more detail in future episodes of what this all looks like. One thing crucial when looking into ceremonial use or therapeutic use is that you feel safe with whoever leads you on your ceremony or journey. When you first speak with them, you want to keep in mind they're not just interviewing you, you are interviewing them. Unfortunately, just because they serve medicine or ayahuasca or 5-MeO or whatever doesn't automatically mean that they're a person with integrity or even have the necessary skills to guide you well. And there's tragically a lot of stories where people have been taken advantage of in an altered state. Make sure they ask you the right questions. See the sources at the bottom of this video. Do your homework. and research and Google who they are, the centers, the reviews, so that you are feeling good about the route you're taking. Keep in mind, if something happens to you while you're overseas, it's very hard to take legal action, and in your own jurisdiction, you're better equipped to take such action. As for therapeutic use goes, this is what we've been hearing so much about in all the news articles. Research is showing that psychedelics are proving super effective in treating PTSD, trauma, depression, and addiction. And MDMA is now on the fast track for FDA approval. Clinical trials and some expanded access clinics are popping up as well, and there's loads of underground therapists offering these services. Patients typically go through some onboarding process to make sure they're fit and prepared, mind and body, and when ready, the guide therapist will provide the psychedelic, the patient partakes, and has their experience, usually at a safe, remote location, ensuring that there's no interruptions. And of course, you might worry, what if the psychedelic doesn't work? And is there a way to control the experience to make sure it's not bad? But the thing is, those of us who have been doing this for a while agree, you can't control these things. Sometimes it doesn't work, and other times it's super challenging experience, and other times it's bliss. And coming from someone who's done this quite a few times, please trust that the hardest experiences are those that teach us the most. Another thing to keep in mind, the high efficacy we hear about is in the clinical trials, and it's largely because therapy is a huge part of it, and finding someone to help you both prepare before and unpack after is incredibly helpful. Finally, after your experience, there's integration. Integration is a very important part of these experiences. On a psychedelic journey, you'll learn lots of stuff, get a different perspective on your life, notice your patterns, see your stories, connect spiritually. But what you do with it in the real world is where it really counts. So after you've had your experience, sharing what you learned with people who understand what you're talking about is really helpful. Find some accountability buddies. Consider working with a professional therapist to help you unpack things, especially if you're working through trauma or a difficult situation. Also, don't put too much pressure on yourself. It all happens as it should. There's about 1 million stories of huge breakthroughs after just one trip, but most of the time, they just don't work that fast. So allow for the meaning to unfold over time. And no, it might not make sense right away, but this is a great time to set some new habits while the ground is fertile for new growth. And some of you are probably wondering, how do you even find the damn stuff? That, I can't tell you. But I can tell you, build community. Go to your local psychedelic society meetups. Go to conferences, festivals, etc. Make friends, real friends. Don't be the guy that shows up and asks someone they just met where to score some shrooms. And in the meantime, do your research and beef up your preparation skills so that when you do encounter psychedelics, you'll have laid down some good groundwork and you will be ready. Honestly, there's about 1 million other things that we didn't even have time to touch on, but we have some incredible resources listed here that should get you everything you need to know. Wishing you the safest, most incredible, insightful journey there ever was, and trust that it's all happening exactly the way it's meant to. Seriously, happy journey.